10 random magic cards rated, day 61, apparently. Happy Saturday, everybody. Did you know you could have seen this on Thursday? We're live on twitch.tv doing a 10 cards rated here on Thursday, but you live in the past or future. I haven't really figured it out. And for you, it's Saturday as you watch this video. So let's see what our first card of the weekend is, baby. It's Scrounger of Souls. Oh my God, it's Scrounger of Souls. I don't even know what this is. 5 mana, 4 and a black for a 3/4 lifelink. Originally printed in Hour of Devastation. I was around for that, doing YouTube videos, covered the whole set. Don't remember this guy, because why would I? 5 mana for a 3/4 lifelink, stinker. Big stinky, not good. That came out of someone's butt. That's not good. It's just not a good card. 1.9. I think 1.9 sounds about right for that. Let's move on to Ooh, it's Lockon Warhammer. We got a good card, everybody. We found ourselves a good card, originally printed at Uncommon, can you believe it? In Mirrodin. 3 mana for an equipment that equips for 3. Equipped creature gets +3/+0, has trample and lifelink. Man, have you ever played against this card? If you've never played against this card, you don't understand. But if you have, then you probably get it a little bit, man. +3/+0 in trample is not +3/+3, but in a lot of cases, it's even better. And of course, lifelink. So even if the creature dies, you gain a bunch of life, you probably trampled over for a couple of damage, and just stick the Warhammer on something else next turn. It even makes 1/1s, 4/1 trample lifelinks. It's nuts, dude. Like, this is a real commander card for a long time, and I'm not sure that it still is, but in the equipment decks, it's probably still like the first thing you reach for when you're building the deck, man. This thing is a masterful piece of cardboard. I miss Lockon Warhammer, dude. There's nothing like having Lockon Warhammer out and your opponent's just like, well, even if I sweep you, you're the first guy you draw off the top of your library is a massive threat. That's ridiculous. But at the same time, there's nothing like looking at a Lockon Warhammer across from the table and being like, well, I'm dead to that. No matter what I do. It's just the amount of inevitability that's inherent on this is not necessarily self-evident. But the moment you play against it, you're like, oh my God, that card murdered me. like quickly. So it had to wake me up. This card had to beat me a few times before I was like, all right, I guess if you can't beat him, join him. Card is absolutely sick. Yeah, it's in my Varduk equipment deck. Of course it would be. Mirrodin made me quit the game for a while. Yeah, but probably not because of this. Oh, this card made me rage so hard as a youngin. So yeah, apparently it was because of this. There's so many reasons Mirrodin would make you rage. And this is one of them, man. Lockon Warhammer is a great Magic card. 7. Try and stop me. If you're trying to stop me from giving this card a 7, you haven't played against it. Really, this card is so ridiculous, bro. But we'll move on to Wither and Bloom from MH3. This is 2 mana, 1 and a black for an instant. A creature gets -3/-3 till end of turn, and you can pay 1 in black and exile it from your graveyard to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control at sorcery speed. No, that's fine. It's fine. Removal spell. Like a nameless inversion plus upside. We see these a lot today, right? Like Virtue of Persistence is a nameless inversion with upside, but it's sorcery speed. Inversions tend to be instant speed. This is fine though. What? Geez, Candy Grapple. Is that another version of this effect? Like kind of a little bit. But yeah, anyway. It does have some graveyard gravy, and I kind of like that, but I can't rate it too high. I'm just going to give it like a 4.4 because it's a more than serviceable removal spell that gives you more value later, and that's, it's a pretty good Magic card, actually. Vashu, baby, Vashino Sandstalker. This is actually a great card, man, or at least it was back in the day. This is 3 mana, 1 and 2 red for a 4/2 haste, and at the end of any turn, return Sandstalker to its owner's hand. So it can't be swept, at least by sorcery speed sweepers, which is like 98% of them. So it can't be swept, it can't be hit by sorcery speed removal, and if your opponent's tapped out, they really can't do anything about it whatsoever. They can try to block it and kill it, but in the meantime, this used to be fairly effective against, slow roll decks, control decks, and stuff like that. They have to save a counter spell for it, and then when they counter it, that's a counter they don't have for your actual monster or whatever, right? So I've always liked Sandstalker. This card did a lot of work on the kitchen table when it first came out. It's not so good anymore, but there was a time. There was a time when I would say this was almost an iconic Magic card to some people. And it has sort of been lost to the sands of time at this point. But that's a real shame, man. Vashino Sandstalker has its place in Magic history as like 4 haste damage on turn 3 in 1998. 1996. 4 haste damage on turn 3 in 1996. And when compared to Ball Lightning, which is a card everyone's going to compare a card like this to, A 3-mana red creature that doesn't last all turn. Ball Lightning dies end of any turn. Immediately. This comes back and can Ball Lightning again. So you just really didn't see 4 power for 3 mana very often back in the day, especially with an ability like Haste that we didn't even know to call Haste back then. So in 1996, I would have given this like a 6.6 or something, 6.68. But in 2024, I have to give this like a 4. And that's like super duper sad because this card was real. I've got chatters who believe me, who were also there. Sandstalker was so fun back when Ironclaw Orcs were a baller 2-drop. Yeah, you have to go to that long ago. And actually, I think Ironclaw Orcs is a really good example of how bad the creature quality actually was back in the day. It's just a 2-mana 2/2, and I believe it has a downside, but because it's a 2-mana 2/2, red decks played it. And when the card quality was that low, Vaishino Sandstalker was not necessarily king, but it was at least prince. So 4.1. I want to give it the honorary 5 of the video, but I think we'll use it somewhere else. Olen Wald Observer from Eldritch Moon is up next. This is 6 mana, 4 and 2 green for a 6/6 tree folk. Whenever a creature you control with toughness 4 or greater dies, draw a card. That's fine. That's okay. Whenever it dies, draw a card too. That's just a fine line of text to have on a card, period. But yeah, in your big green monsters deck and commander, you just play it, right? Like, how has this never been printed in a commander product? It's had a few years to do so. I feel like this should be slightly more expensive. Just a little bit, right? Like $1, something like that. I just think that, like, yeah, it's just solid green thing. I know that there's not a whole lot of green decks that are like, I play big monsters, like in commander specifically. Like there's elves decks and there's decks with other synergies and stuff like that. But there's not a whole lot of green commander decks that are just like, I play stupid men, But if you do have one of those decks, then like this guy's actually pretty sweet. So I'm going to give him a 5.3. That's a pretty hot line of text, man. I think he's okay. I want to give him more than a 5.3 because I'm still 11-year-old dev somewhere in there, Ethereum Abomination is up next. 5 mana, 3, a blue and a black for a 4/3 artifact creature. It's also a horror with Unearth, 1 a blue and a black. That means you can pay that mana cost and return it to play. It gains haste, return it from your graveyard to play. Gains haste, remove it from the game at the end of the turn, or if it would leave play, do this only at sorcery speed. So 5 mana, 4/3, Unearth 3. Not great. 2. I'll just stick a 2 on it and keep going. Imperial Archangel is from Shards of Alara. This is 8 mana, apparently. 4 a green, 2 white, and a blue. For a 5/8 angel with flying and shroud. That means it can't be the target of anything ever. All damage that would be dealt to you is dealt to Archangel instead. Okay. That's just a big dumb card. It's another just stupid giant creature. I guess it's got a cool line of text on it. They can't take it out. I guess it can block and absorb 8 damage, even from flying creatures. So there's that. But I guess if you block and then take a few combat damage, then it'll probably die, Then it'll take that damage instead of you. I don't know. Altogether, it's pretty good. It can probably block like a medium-ish creature. You let some spillover happen, it still doesn't die. It's not bad. I've never seen this card. I was playing for a little bit of Shards of Alara. It may have been one of those times where like I took like a 6-month or a year break from Magic just for like life reasons, but I haven't really come across this card too much, and it's kind of just fine. I can't give it any less than a 5. I really can't, but I think I'm just going to stick it with a 5 and also move on the same way I did the last card because like obviously the card's powerful, but good Lord, it's 8 mana, dude. Think of what you can do for 8 mana, So much better than this card. So I don't know. A giant flyer with shroud is kind of okay. That's not good enough. We'll move on to Dark Pact. Can you even play with this? Yeah, this is an anti-card. I'm not going to count it. Next is Fungus Plots. This is 2 mana, 1 and a green for an enchantment. 1 and a green. Exile a creature card from your graveyard. Create a 1/1 Sapperling creature token. You can sack 2 Sapperlings to gain 2 life and draw a card. Still solid. Originally printed in Dominaria, only ever again printed in Commander Masters. This card's actually really, really cheap for what it does. I would say this is kind of a take on Night Soil from Fallen Empires of all sets, but that was one of the few really, really good cards in Fallen Empires. And Fungus Plots is an updated version of it that's kind of just better, This does only play in your graveyard, which is kind of a problem, but, I could definitely see wanting the Sapperling synergy in specifically Sapperling decks, right? But even if you don't get synergy out of it, this just kind of takes advantage of you having dudes in your graveyard no matter what type they are or anything like that, because gain 2, draw a card is actually pretty good, but it basically costs 4 mana. It costs a total of 6 mana to draw a card and gain the first 2 life, right? Because you had to pay the cost of entry, 2 mana, and then you had to do the ability twice if you don't have any other way of getting Sapperlings. So it's actually kind of a lot, but if you are able to amass an army of little saps, then like that's a lot of potential card draw. So I think this is a relatively powerful enchantment. You know, I'll give this a 5.7. No, I won't. I'll give this a 5.5. I know it's not like that big of a difference, but I think it's actually pretty cool. It's not bad at all. Moving on to Knight of the Holy Nimbus. Oh boy, this was originally printed in Time Spiral. I love Knights, dude. This is 2 white mana for a 2/2 human rebel knight with flanking. That means whenever a creature without flanking blocks it, the blocking creature gets -1/-1 till end of turn. Nice callback there. If Knight of the Holy Nimbus would be destroyed, regenerate it. Nice. You can also pay, or your opponent can pay 2 mana to have Knight of the Holy Nimbus not be regenerated this turn. So they have to pump mana into actually killing this, you know. Pretty solid guy for back in the day, even in the Time Spiral days. This is like a solid dude that didn't see a whole lot of play in Standard in that time period. So we were doing like way more broken stuff than this. It's like Solar Flare and Dragon Storm, and like it's kind of the age of the weird combo decks. Time Spiral Standard and a couple of years after, but Knight of the Holy Nimbus wasn't good enough then, but I still think that it's a really nicely designed card. I love callbacks to Knights. I love the fact that he's riding a Clydesdale. I like Clydesdales. I like regenerate and flanking references on cards, even in, you know, whenever Time Spiral came out, 2007 or something. Even then, these references were rare, you know. So I just kind of like this card overall, and I'm going to give it the honorary 5 of the video. See, we got it. We got there. It's not too bad, but we'll move on to final card of the day. Paladin Elizabeth Taggardy. I have never seen this card in my life. It is from the Fallout set. 3 mana, 1, a red, and a white for a 3/2 legendary human knight with battalion. Whenever Paladin Elizabeth Taggardy and at least 2 other creatures attack, draw a card. Then you may put a creature card with mana value X or less from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking, X being Paladin's power. So kind of a Winota type effect that isn't actually as good as Winota, I would say. You have to attack with more stuff, you know. You might get a smaller creature than Winota, but Winota's good. This costs 1 less mana than Winota. I guess that's Winotable, right? But even so, I guess is my overall response to this. Maybe I'm not seeing it. So since we haven't done it yet, and it's the end of the video, why don't we throw it over to Ask the Audience? I don't want to influence any of the chat's opinions here, but I will say while chat rates these things off to my right, and then I look at it after the next like 30 seconds, I will say that this is a pretty sweet little attacks trigger, especially if you have Ishin 2 Heavens as 1 as your commander. I'll also say that this is pretty sweet to have in your command zone, but I guess you can have Winota in your command zone too, can't you? Is Winota banned in command? I don't think so. I just think that's probably a better card than this, all things considered. But this is cheaper, I bet, maybe, than a Winota, and it's definitely cheaper as far as mana values. So, you know, maybe there's something to it, but I'm going to give this a 5.6. Mostly because it's a pseudo-unique, not entirely unique, but somewhat unique commander. That it would be fun to brew around. You know, I like Battalion as an ability generally. And again, it's got some other potential, like with Ishin and whatnot. So, I don't know. It's not so bad, and at the very least, it's going to draw you a card, right? So, attacks draw you a card is actually pretty powerful. I think I'll stick with a 5.7 on this one. But someone said 5.1. That was JM Rowe. Boombox says 5. So I don't know who else is going to rank. Last time I asked for a rank, we got like 20 people ranking. But it's not looking that way this time. Mostly probably because a lot of you are like, we got a 4.7 down here. I'm going to give this better than average, right? A 5 is an average Magic card. And I think this is a little bit better than average. That's probably why we got a 5.1. Jack Weiss says a 5 sounds right. So maybe I'm overrating it at 5.6, 5.7 just slightly. But I tend to give an extra couple of tenths of a point to a card that can be in your command zone that does something cool like this. You don't see it every day. So I don't know. I like her, but again, when you compare her to cards that you're obviously supposed to compare her to, she kind of comes up short. So, but then again, 3 mana as opposed to 4 might be all right. But yeah, that's where we'll end things for number 61, day number 61 of 10 cards rated. Expect to see this on Saturday, people who are currently in chat and people currently watching on YouTube. Follow on Twitch. I'll leave a link in the description, probably, if I remember. But anyway, we're about to look at brand new Magic cards here in just a second. We got some Dustmorn previews. I just wanted to give people time to file in, but we're going to go do that. Don't you wish you could do that too? I'm telling you, follow on Twitch, YouTube people. But for now, that's the end of the YouTube video. Bye.